Welcome again. We just said we'd make a video about the Storm Eowyn. And Eowyn, that word comes from the Lord of the Rings, a character in the Lord of the Rings. A female character as far as I know, but I can't remember that much about her. But anyway, um, Storm Eowyn was definitely a historical event on the 24th of January. It really devastated everything and brought everything to a standstill. And of course, initially we all complained that we had no electricity and some people had no water. Of course, there was a certain amount of damage done, trees were knocked down and electric poles were knocked down and telegraph wires, telephone wires were pulled down as well. And it was pretty frightening during the storm in the night time. Anybody who was in their house, they were afraid the roof might be taken off or whatever. So it was pretty dangerous. The good thing was that it was in the night time, so very few people were out. Everybody was warned not to be out, so I don't think anybody got killed directly as a result of it. So people complained that we were without electricity, some people for 2 weeks, some people for a bit less than that. It certainly was a tough time, and especially with the cold, people who didn't have a fireplace had maybe no way of heating and no way of making a cup of tea, maybe unless they had gas or some other form of boiling a kettle or whatever, boiling water. So it was difficult and it was a tough time and it will not be forgotten because it was one of the worst storms I'd say in recent times in Ireland. Definitely in the 21st century, I would say in Ireland it was the worst one, and probably you'd have to go back a long way to get a bad one, maybe back to the 60s or whatever to get one as bad before. So initially, looking at it from the first look at it, it looks very bad. It was very bad. It was a tough time. But when tough things happen, good people appear. A lot of good people appeared and did their best. And people did help each other, especially in a house where somebody might be sick. A lot of people did help. I know a house where someone had one of these medical beds that works by electricity. They were given a generator by a neighbour, and that was a big help to that family, and also then they could have a bit of light and so on. And the sad thing for them was the generator went on fire, but they were able to handle that, and the generator still worked even though it went on fire. So there were many examples of that. And in fairness to people here in Kilasser, um, the community centre, Paul Hyland and the community centre committee, they provided a generator for people to come to the community centre and to charge their phones, and even while the RSS men were there, you could have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. There was tea or coffee provided for people, which was a big help and certainly made a difference. And as regards the church itself, for 2 of those weekends we had a generator, and it's just as well that we did have one because the first weekend that we had the generator, we had a funeral, and it was terrible to have the funeral for the family, but we had heat in the church and we had light and there was music. It was the same as any other funeral, and the only difference was the noise of the generator, which was outside. But it was great to have the generator for that funeral. It was great to have the generator then for the evening mass and for the 12 o'clock mass on the Sunday. That was all fantastic. And then the power did come back here, but it went again before last weekend. So we had a wedding, so we needed the generator again then, and we got the generator again, and again for the wedding we had we had light and we had heat and we had music, and it was the same as any other wedding. It went well. It was a very good wedding. The only thing was in the distance maybe you could hear the generator, and then we had it for the evening mass and for the morning mass again. So even though it was a bad storm and a difficult time, people pulled together, neighbours helped each other, and that was fantastic. And people who were lucky enough, of course, to have a fireplace could put in timber or coal or turf or whatever just to keep warm. And it slowed us all down, which is the other thing. Not being able to have a phone or not being able to use the phone. Somebody said once that the phone has ruled and ruined our lives, and that's actually true. People are looking at their phones all the time, and people are spending maybe too much time on the phone, on the mobile phone, and social media and all that. And when there was no power to charge the phone, we had to do without it. And I know personally I went back reading more books than I usually do, and people just had to sit back and think. And there was another aspect of it was silence. You know that now people between having phones and turning on the radio, and if you're in the car, the radio is on and listening to music and all that. Our world has become a very noisy world, and there's very little silence in the world. But silence is a great gift, and the world we live in doesn't seem to like silence, but silence is where God speaks to us. And we need silence in our lives. And silence helps us to reflect and helps us to relax and helps us to settle down as well. And I think, especially for young people, that storm, the aftermath of it, what happened afterwards, might be a great blessing for our young people who are constantly on the phones, constantly on iPads and so on, playing computer games and video games and all those kind of things. And with the storm, with the lack of electricity, they weren't able to do that much of that. It might have encouraged them. I saw the children here outside a lot more, playing outside and outside on the grass and playing football and mixing with each other and relating to each other and spending more time together, all the kids from here and the young people. I thought that was great. And actually I have to thank the young people because some of them came to my door and said they had picked up all the branches around the church that were knocked down, and that was very nice that they did that because it was a help to us cleaning up afterwards. So I think for young people it might have been a blessing in many ways, and also for young people to realise that we depend so much on electricity, and that when it goes, we need to be resourceful. Then we need to come up with other ways to survive. Maybe other ways to cook a meal, and some people have those stoves that are run by gas and so on, and maybe to have different type of food, tinned food or whatever, maybe to use a torch or to use candles and so on, and even at night time, even in bed, just to get more blankets and to have heat that way rather than use electric blankets or whatever it was. So there's a lot of good can come out of a storm, a lot of good, and to get us to think about planning for the future and having candles and having torches, having canned food or tinned food, and having something to cook a meal, gas stoves or whatever, having those things ready because we can't rely on the electricity all the time. We need to be ready when it goes at a storm or whatever. So maybe we were being taught something, maybe there was something to be learned from it all. And maybe the government too, they responded, according to what people say, they responded very slowly to the crisis or whatever. They have lessons to learn as well. I suppose we all have lessons to learn from a storm like that. But it does, as I say, bring out good in people. A lot of people did good to their neighbours and help neighbours and everything. And people got through it as well. And a bit of suffering like that can be a good thing because it helps us to cope, and there's always more within us to help us to deal with tough situations. And for young people, again, tough situations will always crop up for every one of us. And no matter what we do, we can't avoid them. But the big thing is to be able to deal with them and not to get too upset by them, not to get overwhelmed by them, but to learn how to deal with them and to use our minds and all that we have to cope with them. So please God, we won't have a storm like that again too soon, but there probably will be other storms and there will be other things that will happen to us that will test us. So please God, we'll be ready. I suppose the biggest thing of all is to be prepared. Somebody said once that failure to plan is really planning to fail. So we need to kind of plan for these things and for tough events that might come up, to be ready for them, so that when they do occur, that we'll be ready and ready to deal with them and not allow them to overpower us too much. So that's my little reflection on the storm. And then there are many storms in life, not just a wind like that, but many other storms that occur in our lives that test us and that really make life hard for us. But again, as I say, is to learn how to deal with them, to learn how to react to them. And the big thing is that people came together more than ever. And by coming together, we were able to deal with the problems that it created. And again, thanks to the ESB men and women who did all that work to get the power back. Again, the telephone lines aren't completely back yet, but hopefully eventually they will be. And as I said, we all learned something, and God sent all that to us probably for his own reason. So that's all I want to say, and thanks to everyone who helped somebody else and who helped the situation. We're grateful to people who offer